Hey Tiger fans, thanks for joining us for the very first episode of TigerCast, the official podcast of Towson Athletics. I'm Laura Leidick with the Towson Sports Network, and I'm super excited to get this project rolling, and there's no one better to do that with than fellow intern Rashad Christian. Rashad, how's it going tonight?
It's going good. Just had a pretty chill day, pretty fun day. Kind of just lounging around the house and stuff. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Just watching sports, doing homework. Okay, so to kick things off with TigerCast, we have the Director of Digital Media, the one and only Ben Rosenbaum. Ben, how's it going today?
It's going. Just, like Rashad just said, minus the homework, or like you said, minus the homework. I watched the Ravens game today, and otherwise, not much. A rare slow day for me.
When's the last time you've actually seen or done a homework assignment, Ben?
2000. Well, okay, so I graduated 2013. I went back to be a teacher 2014, but then I stopped, and I think so maybe 2016, 2017. Yeah, 2016, I think. Sometime then. Maybe December 2016.
Oh, that's not too far away.
Yeah, years.
I'm not as old as Rashad tries to make me sound.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wasn't asking the questions to make you feel old. I just wanted to clarify that one. So I guess we're just going to jump right into this interview.
Yeah.
So you're Towson alumni. What influenced your decision to attend Towson, and can you reflect on your time here as a student?
Yeah, so I went to, out of high school, I went to Penn State. My freshman year, I went to one of the satellite campuses. I really wanted to go to main campus, so I did the whole 2+2 thing because I didn't want to even take my shot on not getting into Penn State. But apparently, I could have gotten into Penn State straight away, but I was too scared to try. So I did that for a year. Did not like the situation at Penn State for me. Didn't feel like college, at least the campus that I was at. So Towson was a school I had applied to out of high school. I'd gotten in. I'd never toured it. But I had, friends and then girlfriend, now wife at the time, that was going to Towson, and I had visited her and visited friends, and Towson felt like college. It felt like college. So that kind of helped my decision to transfer. I end up at Towson, and then I had a blast as a student. Sports was huge for me. Sports has always been huge for me through my whole life, and I wanted that college athletics experience, and I went to Towson during a time that was really exciting to be a Tiger. You have my first year was the year football struggled. The 1-win season with the 4 overtime win against Coastal Carolina was a crazy atmosphere, but then they go on that crazy run the next couple of years with Terrence West and Grant Enders and guys like Jordan Dangerfield and Ty Smith on defense, and obviously, it kind of culminates in the national championship run. And then at the same time, basketball having the big turnaround season and the opening of CQ Arena. So, my time at Towson was great. I'll always remember those times fondly, and it always will be an important part of my life and, the things I learned and the things I got to do. It gave me that college experience I was looking for.
I'm assuming then athletics and going to games and stuff was a big factor with where you're going to go to school as a student, wanting to be involved that way too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at Penn State, they had sports. They have the all the Penn State satellite campuses play each other, and that's their conference. I don't even think they qualify as Division III. I don't know what they qualify, if anything, but we had sports. We had basketball, soccer, baseball. I think that was it. I worked for the athletic department there. I was the PA announcer for the men's and women's basketball games, which I guess was my first announcing job, even though, it was a very small speaker with a very small microphone. I remember it was a weird little headset that barely reached here. And maybe 30 people, 20 people would be in the gym, not counting the teams. But so when I got to Towson, though, being able to sit front row at Unitas, which I did for so many years, right on the 50-yard line, that was so much fun. It was a great student section. We packed it the years I was at Towson. It was standing room only some games in that student section, and literally everybody was standing. No one ever sat. And then starting to work with TSN, getting to be involved. I mean, as a student, I interned for TSN, and that was just so cool being on the sidelines, getting to start to announce women's basketball games, which I'm going into my 9th Yeah, my 9th year now. And that started back when I was a student. So I don't think I'd ever would have gotten those kind of experiences at a bigger campus because there's so much competition. There's so much. And I'm not saying that it was easy to do it at Towson. You still have to earn these kind of things. Rashad, Laura, you're new to us, but Rashad can tell you he didn't get to do some of the things that he's gotten to do just overnight. He had to work for it. But Towson, because it's that smaller campus, they have more opportunities for students where other campuses might just hire professionals here in, every single day.
Yeah, and I can say with conversations I've had with other interns, like starting out, like Lexi and Tessa, all them, like everything's earned. Like you just have to like come in and work hard, and I feel like that's very true, and I can see that.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, I think the students learn a lot, and they kind of grow with the athletes. I mean, it's cool to watch a freshman TSN intern come in and not know much, like a Ryan McGettigan or even a Tessa Peloso and or a Lexi Hill. And I mean, Lexi had a little bit more experience than Ryan and Tessa did, but not know a lot of stuff. And you put it with with a freshman point guard who maybe doesn't always know what to do on the offensive side of the ball, struggles on defense, but by the time they become seniors, they're as important. They're the most important person you have. And it's very similar. It's a very similar progression. It's always cool to watch. And I take a lot of joy seeing both our student athletes and our student interns grow in that way.
Ben, you alluded to it. I had come in with experience because I had transferred in from Robert Morris. I was working the TV shows. I was an on-air talent. I was editing videos, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I got in there. Ben told me, like in the interview, he was like, "You're gonna have to work up to that." And, it's good that you came in with it, but there's still it's kind of a hierarchy here. You work your way from the bottom, and then you get to do the stuff. So it's definitely humbling, right? Because I thought I was just gonna be able to come in, do what I wanted to do, and then that was it. But there's rules, there's standards for TSN, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, we don't necessarily. I think we do as good of a job as any other school in our conference in terms of broadcasting games. I know our streams may not always look the same, but that's just a case of a lot of those places. You think about a JMU or a Delaware do utilize professionals, adults that do this for their job, freelancers even. Outside of men's basketball and football, it's all students. Every single broadcast is all students. There was a couple of years ago, we had a gymnastics event where myself or Brandon was not present. It was a totally student-run gymnastics broadcast. I was on the road with men's basketball. Brandon was on the road with men's basketball. And we had a major gymnastics event, and we were like, we had, I think Rachel Ederer was our director then, and Brian Contreras, I think, was probably the floor cam. Brittany Everett was a camera op. And these are people who I'm naming who Rachel Ederer now works for, Rashad Motor Week as a producer. And Brittany Everett is at Maroon PR as a digital media coordinator. And she also freelances for CBS or Fox for NFL games. And Brian Contreras is, will arguably go down as the best videographer to ever come through TSN. He's now working for Maryland Public Television. And these are people who worked really hard from day one. All of them, except for Brittany, came in as freshmen. Brian and Rachel came in as freshmen. And they got to this point where I was like, I told my boss at the time, I'm like, hey, it's going to be Rachel running the show for gymnastics. Brandon and I won't be there. And they were like, okay, that's fine. I might trust Rachel more than I trust either of you. And I mean, I don't blame him for that. Rachel was great. Rachel was money. And, and I think, Rashad's at that level at this point where if we had a meet, Rashad won't want me to do it, but I would tell Rashad, you're running gymnastics, but I would be totally confident in Rashad to get everyone set up and run a show. Same thing goes for Tessa and as recently as Lexi and Ryan McGettigan.
Yeah, I can relate on the transfer student stuff, but I was a business major. I came to Towson, changed to mass comm, and I was like, I just want to get involved. Somehow, some way I want to get involved. And I was actually leaving an EMS class, and I saw you had like a paper on like a bulletin board. And I emailed you and Brandon. And I was like so nervous to come in, but like honestly, like I just feel like doing all this research and like getting involved and like just making sure I go into everything like well researched and asking questions. Like I feel like as long as you do that and put the work in, like TSN is a great opportunity to like to network too and get experience.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned being what'd you say, a business major at first. That's also the beauty of not just college but TSN is we let you get experience in kind of everything. And the amount of people that have shifted their focus from I want to be A, but by the time they graduate, I want to do B. And Rashad is, I think, the main example of that. Rashad was Mr. I'm going to be the next, host of NBA on TNT or whatever it is. And Rashad now, you'll do on-camera stuff. You do on-camera stuff, but it's not your main focus. You've shined, and I think you've helped us kind of develop a look as a social media look in terms of video presence, in terms of your video editing. And that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of Rashad's focus now is the video editing. And yeah, it's like it's a true college experience. We want everyone to get their feet wet and everything. But yeah, no, let's talk some Towson sports. Let's talk Towson because basketball's right around the corner now. It's getting crazy.
Towson sports, right? You've been involved since you transferred over. You mentioned the electric atmosphere of the football games and basketball games and such like that. Kind of what were some of your best moments, either as a student watching Towson sports or as the director of digital media and working for TSN?
Oh my God. How long is this thing? we could go for a while. I'll name a few. I'll pick a couple as a student. I think that 4 overtime game against Coastal Carolina will always stand out to me. Cause obviously it was awesome Towson won it, but what an insane football game to just kind of have these two teams. I think both teams knocked an extra point off the upright at one point, and when it happened back to back consecutively, I might be wrong on that, but both teams missed an extra point, ringing it off the upright during one of the overtimes, and it was just nuts. It was absolutely nuts. You have Tom Ryan mossing Josh Norman, all-pro Josh Norman, in the corner of the end zone at one point, which is
picture lately. Didn't you?
I love that picture because Tom Ryan is one of the he'll be up there. He was one of the just most hardworking wide receivers to see. He was going to catch a ball. There was no doubt. You think about the Old Dominion game too, the 4th and 29. It was just, that picture will always just be one of the best Towson pictures in my mind. But yeah, then I think you have the turnaround the next year with football with Grant Enders and Terrence West, Dominique Booker, Frank Beltray, Jordan Dangerfield, just leading that team to a CAA championship. I went to the national championship game. Yeah, I'm fast forwarding a little bit. But I sat front row 50-yard line for every single football game that I was a student. It was awesome. And I know students come, but then they sometimes leave, or sometimes they don't show up. I can't, and I'm not just saying this because I work for athletics, as a college student, whether you're a big sports fan or not, because I had friends who were not sports fans. One of my best friends in college was not a big sports fan. He likes sports, but he would come because it was a good time. It was fun. It was a great time, and it makes a huge, huge difference for the team. I know that. I really encourage everyone to come out. It's so much fun. Once it's safe to do so, I really encourage, pack the U, pack CQ for everything. Other stuff, kind of getting into my time. I was at the game where Pat Scarry got his first win as the Towson head coach, breaking the long drought against UNCW, still in the Towson Center. I was at the final games in the Towson Center. I called the final women's basketball game in the Towson Center. Actually, Brandon Sachs called the final women's basketball game in the Towson Center because Lil Wayne did a concert in CQ and bumped women's basketball a few years ago back to the Towson Center. Men's basketball beating Temple with Jarrell Benjamin, Marcus Damas, that's a huge win for the program. And then getting into working at Towson, the amount of CAA championships we've seen. I called the women's lacrosse CAA championship a few years ago, Towson over JMU, getting to witness men's lacrosse go on their runs and beating Loyola a couple years ago, becoming the #1 team. One of my personal favorite athletes is Dominique Johnson, women's basketball, becoming the all-time 3-point leader, being able to watch her from freshman to to being a senior and watching her accomplish everything she did. Women's basketball CAA championship, playing UConn in the tournament. I mean, there's so many. It's so hard. I was at Missy McCormick's perfect game for softball, I remember. There's so many. I can't just pick. There's so many. I mean, and it's what adds to it is how the quality of our student athletes. When you see them perform well on the court or on the field, knowing them off the field, off the court, and knowing how hard they worked and how good of a student they are, adds to that.
And you've talked a lot about watching the interns and athletes grow and just being at the events, being able to call the events and stuff like that. So what else is what is that the most enjoyable part of the job for you? What else is there that's enjoyable about what you do?
Growing up, I always wanted to be a broadcaster. I never really thought about, like Rashad, I never really thought about video editing or filming. And now that's honestly one of my favorite parts is I filmed the Loyola win, the Towson Loyola win, the men's lacrosse. That was so much fun. I filmed football on the sidelines. That's so much fun. Being, out there on the field pregame with those guys is so much fun. But I always wanted to be a broadcaster. So calling the games for me is crazy that someone trusts me to do that someone has given me a microphone and says, "Here, Ben, tell us what's going on." I'm like, oh God, 11-year-old Ben is going crazy. And it's, that's so cool. And so that's definitely up there for me from a personal note. But yeah, like you said, Laura, watching our student athletes grow. I remember Nakaya Mayo when she came to Towson. She was super shy, didn't want to talk to media ever. And she, 4 years later, she's leading this team to a CAA championship along with Mello and Q and Ryan Holder, and still doesn't enjoy talking to the media, but she had warmed up to us at this point, and she was able to show some personality and be funny with us sometimes, and that kind of stuff will always be so cool. The bad part of it though, it makes time pass quicker for me, and so I mentioned Nakaya Mayo. Coming in I remember her as a freshman. Now she's gone. That's 4 years. That has just gone by so quickly. I was thinking we're getting ready for our women's basketball tip-off event. Siobhan Smith is a junior.
Wait, really?
And, that's crazy to me. That's crazy. I blink and, she's this young freshman just wanting to get the ball. And now she's a junior. She's one of the, the leaders of this team. She's one of the few upperclassmen they have on this team, along with Mello, and it's crazy. Same thing with Tess Borges. Tess is a junior or a senior now. I think Tess is a senior now. Their junior year is when it hits you that oh man, time has flown by.
Where'd the sophomore year go?
Exactly, where'd the sophomore year go? And it seems because you remember them when they're freshmen. I mean, you think about a guy like Zach Goodrich who comes in as a freshman and. He does really well, plays really hard, and sophomore year, Zach Goodrich had as good of a sophomore year as you could have. And then junior year, oh man, Zach's a junior. And then senior year, well, buy Zach Goodrich in 4 years. And we're all 4 years older. It's not like you're still, it's not like I'm still 25 and watching the Kai Mayo. I am now 29 years old, and those 4 years just flew.
I felt like college is just going by so fast, but now you're telling me that it doesn't slow down after college. So,
I mean, I talk about it from an intern standpoint. It seems like yesterday Tessa Peloso was, sheepishly coming into my office, nervous and shaking and interviewing for a position. She's a senior now. That's crazy. Where did those 4 years go? And apparently Abby's just going to ruin this whole interview.
I've been hearing her shake for the past 10 minutes now.
Hey, Abby, I'm doing a podcast. Okay, you're not impressed. All right.
So I just want to go back to your, you mentioned the game, the Coastal Carolina game, the 5 overtime. Actually, I pulled up the story while you were talking about it. Coach Ambrose said, anybody who stuck around sure got their money's worth tonight. Just thinking about moments like that, is there ever a time when you wish that you could go be a student again and be in that atmosphere?
Yeah, of course. All the time. Are you kidding me? I think all of us would want to stay in college forever. But are you saying what games that I've seen as as an employee that I would want to witness as a student.
I mean, just in, like, do you miss going to games as a student instead of, as Ben, the director?
Hands down. I mean, I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It's great. But going to games, and like, I can't get like too into detail, but like me and my friends had such a good time. I mean, we were, getting on, because for those who haven't been to a football game as a student, and again, I really encourage you to do so. Our student section is right on top of the away bench. Those players can't go anywhere. They're going to sit there and listen to whatever you have to say to them. So, there you go. So, we had so much fun just being loud, and, the football team would win, and they'd come over, they sing the fight song. I mean, you guys are students, so you know that we do it, but when the band plays ESPN or plays Sports Center, that used to be like the second half. I mean, they still play it before the second half or during the second half. And that used to be like turn up time. That the whole stadium, the whole student section would be doing it in unison. They'd be singing it along and screaming it. And it was, it got Towson going. It got I'll remember watching Jordan Dangerfield do it along with the student sections before a huge defensive series. And I'll remember the other team trying to get a call in. They're trying to get a call in, and the students had kept doing it as the band had stopped, and they had to burn a timeout coming out of like a media timeout because they couldn't get the call on the field. They couldn't hear. And it's so much fun. It's just so much fun. It's, anyone who thinks, it's just Towson or it's a mid-major or it's FCS, that means nothing. Towson has beaten and plays FBS opponents. So it's Division I football. I mean, do a little bit of marketing. We have North Dakota State coming in this upcoming football season in the fall. Those guys travel. And I don't mean the team, I mean the fans. So there's going to be a lot of North Dakota State fans in Towson, and I really hope that we counter them out with Towson fans and Towson students especially, because they'll make that atmosphere their own, and it's crazy. It's nuts. So, yeah, I would love to be a student again and go to a game and be loud. And, now that, CQ is – Pat Scary's building something, and with Diana Richardson as well. I mean, if I was a student, I'd still hope I'd be calling the games for women's basketball. But, watching Mello, I mean, some of the stuff Rashad has seen it that Mello does, I can't put into words on a broadcast. Yeah. And I know student Ben would just be like passing out in his chair, just watching some of the stuff she does. And, I mean, the same goes for lacrosse. I mean, I wasn't a big lacrosse guy growing up, but I love working lacrosse games, soccer, field hockey, even. It's awesome. It's great going as a student and watching, your fellow students, your fellow classmates. You have class with these people. It's awesome. It's neat. I would love to be a student. Yes, I would trade it to be a student again. But I'll never forget like just yelling and screaming and being there with my friends. We had a huge group of about 15, 20 of us that would go. And we filled that front row, and we knew that the group that we weren't friendly with, but we were friendly on Saturdays with them, they were going to be next to us and they were going to be behind us. And it was nuts. It's wild. If you have a group of friends, spend Saturday afternoon. I sound like Rob Ambrose. Spend Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening with your friends, supporting your school and just being loud and cutting loose and being rowdy. I mean, it's a great kickoff to the weekend. No pun intended. Making dad jokes.
Oh, man. I definitely do miss, because I am still a student. Obviously, I'm in my last semester. But, I mean, this semester aside, it's been all online. But, I mean, I kind of do miss going to games as a spectator. Like, I know I've done it while I'm working at TSN, but, it's just such a different feeling.
I agree with that. I obviously haven't gone to a Towson game as a fan. There's times where I'm not working a Towson game and I'll come just to watch. I end up working. I have to bring the dog with me or bring my wife, so I don't get in total work mode. But usually I just check in on everybody and then I'll stick around. And but I went to my brother he lives out in Los Angeles, and he, for his job, sometimes has to take clients to Lakers games, and they have a box, like a suite in the Staples Center, And we went out there to visit them for Christmas one year. And he texted me, he goes, "Hey, I have to work on Christmas. I have to take a client to the Lakers game. Do you want to come?" I was like, "Yeah, for sure. That would be so cool." And I go there. First of all, insane. And I'm sitting in the suite, and we have, we're sitting kind of behind one of the baskets, elevated, and we have a really good view of their production room that kind of oversees the court. I watched the people in the production room as much as I watched the actual basketball game. It's so hard to kind of shift. It's like I was watching the Ravens game today, and a guy messed up on camera, and I was like, "See, you can't do that. You can't just always anticipate what someone's doing." And like I'm always in, working in athletics mode, and I don't know if I'll ever get out of it. Go to an O's game, it's the same thing. I'm watching the video board more than I'm watching the actual players. It's so weird. It's so weird. I know other people feel the same way. It's hard to separate yourself.
TV and movies too, right? So if you hear like audio that's messed up, you're like, "Oh man, maybe you should have equalized it a little bit or lowered down the music or something like that." It's definitely weird.
I've caught myself like watching NFL games, and like sometimes you'll hear the announcers, and like you're like, "Wait, did he just say that? Like, why would he word that like that?"
A couple weeks ago, I forget who the announcer was for the Ravens game, but they were calling Lamar Jackson for the entire first quarter Murray, because I think they had just been talking about Kyler Murray.
Oh.
And he called him Murray for like an entire touchdown drive. And as a play-by-play guy, I've had similar screw-ups, and I'm just sitting there just like, can't mess something like that up. Like, come on, someone's got to get in his ear.
Well, when the Ravens played the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes' mom tweeted and said, "This announcer needs to stop calling my son Pat." I'm like, "Oh, you can't use nicknames. That's true. You need to use the right name because you're going to offend people."
It is hard, and I'll tell you, that is something I really struggle with. Like, we talked about Siobhan Smith. I try really hard not to call her Scoop on a broadcast because Towson fans know 23 is Scoop. A Hofstra fan, you have to remember, you're also calling this game, and there's other fans of other schools watching this game. They don't know who or what a Scoop is, so you got to try to stick with Smith. Same thing with the first names. I'm very guilty. That's probably the thing I'm most guilty of, is saying things like, if when we had Q Murray, Q brings the ball over half court. Again, we know who Q is, and I think that's something you hear a lot. And I don't know, there's part of me that thinks it's okay to call someone by your first name, but I know I'm not calling anyone on the other team by their first name. So it's kind of like a weird balancing act. And again, it's not like you're the impartial broadcasters, but you are the Towson broadcasters. So you try to find the balancing act. And I've been trying to get more on just saying the last name or the non-nickname as much as I can during broadcast.
I wanted to respond to what Rashad was saying about like missing going to games as a student. Like with COVID, like I haven't experienced that at Towson, and being at a community college and then going to Salisbury where there's no games to go to. I tried to go to a football game. It was cold. I was alone. It was not fun. So like I never got to like experience that. And so I was like coming to Towson, like ready for like this whole thing to start and be like, okay, football games, basketball games, I'm going to go to all of them. My friends are going to be there. And like, oh, just kidding. COVID. You're not going.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely, and I've said it to interns before, like we work a lot of games. Lord knows we work, we're at every home event. I definitely encourage everyone, though. I know that we're here so much as workers and that you maybe want to if you get that day off, you don't want to spend your time going to the game. But I definitely encourage, my students to go to a game as a student, not working the game. College experience. I think it's important. And that's, first and foremost, is I want to make sure they get a good college experience. So it's important to me that they get to experience that for them. But then 2, they can come back to us and say, look, as a student, I think this. Or if they watch a game, I have an ex-intern who now works at, Longwood University, kind of in my similar role. And he'll still watch our games and text me about like, oh, I liked this on your broadcast. I'm going to try to do that with Longwood. Or, I think, maybe it would be interesting if you guys did this. And, it's always a different perspective because, Brandon and I might have a way or a vision for something, but you guys are just as big of a consumer. So, we'll always take feedback for sure.
So how has COVID changed your job? Like, what things are you seeing that you're having to do differently now that the pandemic?
The Zoom.
The Zoom, yeah. That's a good example.
The amount of interviews we've done over Zoom, it's become second nature now to us.
Is that how you interviewed the new interns? I was just curious.
Yeah, like the interns that we've hired for this semester, I can't have them. They're not on campus, so I've interviewed them over Zoom. So there's that part of it. All of the throwback, like the classic throwback games that we've been posting each week, all those interviews are done over Zoom. Virtual pro day for football was done over Zoom. Introducing the new women's basketball players was done over Zoom. We have a series of posts coming out for the new women's lacrosse players. That's over Zoom. Spiro Marikis doing his shows over Zoom. It's just become, we have our meetings, we have our staff meetings over Zoom. I already stared at a computer screen a lot with everything. And now this is just more time staring at the computer, but there's that part of it. But there's, we had to get creative earlier than usual. We usually kind of have a vague summer plan in the spring. Like we already have an idea what we're going to do once we get into lacrosse season, stuff we might do for the summer. That got sped up, okay, now we're in summer mode now. So, we had to get creative, and my hat off to Dave Vatz and John Stark, Nicole Curtin, and Eris Thomas for the SIDs for coming up with different things to do and post, and they've been great. And, Spiro's been great. Doing his Tiger Talk stuff. And, I've tried to get out now that student athletes are practicing again. I've tried to go out to a different team each week to get a little practice video, highlight video with them all. And it's definitely was challenging. It pushed us creatively. I have to give credit to Tom Flacco. He was the one who had the idea for the virtual pro day. He texted me one day, say, "Hey, I lost pro day. Can we do this for me and the other seniors?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, sure." So that was cool. But it was challenging for everybody. And I think there was no school that was necessarily prepared for this, from your Power 5 all the way down to D3. I don't think anyone was ready for this. And I think, across the board, we've seen a lot of schools approach it in so many different ways. And that's another cool part of the job, seeing how different schools have attacked things like this and gotten creative. And, now with games being played for some sports and some conferences, and us getting ready for basketball, it's interesting to see the planning that's going into it.
You talk about sports and you can just tell how much you love sports. Like, where does that stem from?
My family. My parents are from New York. I was born and raised in Baltimore, but my parents are from New York. My dad is a very big Rangers fan. He's a very big Giants fan. He's adopted the Orioles because he had him or my mom had an apartment where they could see into Memorial Stadium, so they watched a bunch of O's games that way. But then my dad's sister, my aunt, who's also from New York, her and her husband moved to Philadelphia. And if we know anything about Philadelphia fans, they like to get passionate, especially against New York fans. So they had two sons, and they were, raised in Philly, and everybody in that family, in that home, became Eagles and Flyers and Sixers fans and Phillies fans. And Baltimore has professional sports, obviously, but this is pre-Ravens. And we don't have a professional hockey team. So I come from a hockey family. My brother and I played hockey growing up. So I don't know how I was even put into a situation where my hockey fanhood was a question. It should have been straight up Rangers because of growing up in a New York house. But my earliest sports memory is sitting in Philadelphia, in my cousin's house in Philadelphia, watching a Flyers-Rangers game, and the Flyers winning. And my aunt, who I was very close with, she passed away when I was in middle school, but I was very close with her growing up, sitting with me, and the Flyers are winning, and she's telling me why I should be a Flyers fan. And then I'm my brother's little brother by 7 years, so there's nothing like sticking it to my older brother as a 6 or 5 year old or whatever. So I was like, I'm going to be a Flyers fan. And so talking with my family with sports, we did a family fantasy football league for years, and we don't do it anymore. But, the Ravens Super Bowl, when the Ravens became a thing, just always talking about sports, always sports. Thanksgiving, with Thanksgiving around the corner, obviously it'll be very different this year, but without failure, a bunch of us would be circled around a TV watching Lions, whoever. So my family was huge in that, and my family was also super supportive of being a broadcaster. And my aunt would always encourage me with things like that. My parents are super supportive. My brother's my biggest critic, but like my biggest fan at the same time. Like, I'll send my family a clip of me calling a game, and my mom and my dad would be like, "That's great, you're so good at this," and my brother will be like, "Fix this, which is great because you need to critique yourself still. I'm not Al Michaels or Doc Emmerich. So my love of sports definitely comes from my family. My grandmother was a super athlete. She was one of the first women's or girls high school, or she was on the first girls high school basketball championship team in New York. She golfed, she bowled, she did all this stuff. My mom's father played like semi-pro football for a little while. So I come from a sports family, and I don't know if people consider this a sport, I guess, depending on who you ask, but my mom has like a great uncle or a distant cousin that was like a bullfighter in Spain and stuff. So yeah, that's random, right? Sports has always kind of just been around my family, and you want to do what your family does, especially when you're the young one. You want to do what your family does, kind of, and that's what I think made me chase sports for sure.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. Like, my dad played semi-pro for a little bit, but you said you played hockey.
I did.
How long did you play hockey for?
I started playing when I was 7, and I played through high school. I got a pretty nasty back injury and a pretty bad knee injury. And when you're a goalie, you're always dropping and then having to pop back up. And I have like a slight tear in my meniscus, and it just kind of made it harder for me to drop and pop back up. The back injury, I mean, once you're around me a lot more, you'll hear me go, "Oh God, my back really hurts." And I think it stems from, I had a friend who was like double, triple the size of what a normal kid my age should have been at like 15 years old. And he was a defender, and I like dove to cover a puck, and I guess he got hit or tripped up, and he fell right on my back, and that hurt. So just all kind of, and I knew I wasn't going to, go play in college or play in the NHL or anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I'm cool. I'm done playing. I won one championship, made a couple all-star teams. So
there you go. That's a whole good career.
Yeah, I figure I'm one of the GOATs. I'm a Maryland local hockey GOAT.
I guess like the last question I had for you was, with the global pandemic going on, what changes do you foresee for TSN?
As far as TSN goes, I mean, there's going to be COVID protocols for working. Obviously masks, social distancing, sanitizing, things like that. But I think the only thing that's going to really change for TSN is, well, I'll tell you now, like, the broadcasters are going to be on the concourse for basketball. So that's a change. But I think the real only change is how important TSN is. TSN's always been important. I'm not just saying that as the director of TSN and wanting to, lift myself and my department. But now, with people not necessarily being able to be at games for a while, we're going to have more people watching our broadcast than ever before, right? So our job is going to get really magnified and really, examined closely, and it's going to be under a microscope every single night. And I said at the beginning of this thing that I think we do a really good job, as good of a job as anybody in the conference, if not better than a lot of schools. And it's time for us this year to really put our money where our mouth is, and say, like, look, budget cuts are hard. Everyone's dealing with it, but we're going to still put out a really good product for our fans to watch. And, I promise that. We've had meetings about, we'll still be able to have the same amount of camera angles, I think we will have to knock halftime interviews for women's basketball, like with Tessa. I don't think she'll be able to do sideline reporting just because they're limiting how close people can be and just trying to keep people distanced. I don't know. Like I said, we're going to be on the concourse. I don't know what we'll do in terms of a post-game interview with coaches on air, but we'll obviously still have press conferences that people will be able to watch, and things like our highlight videos and feature stories. Again, it's a little limited because they try to keep everyone distant, so we can't sit someone down in the studio. But we're really going to be the only gateway for the most part for the foreseeable future. Obviously things are always changing, but we're kind of the gateway for fans to watch and learn about their student athletes and their favorite Tigers and their teams. And so it's on us this year, big time. I can say this: whenever we do have a soccer game again, that new press box, our soccer broadcast, just because of the press box, improved 1,000%, because we're finally elevated a little bit and we're not going to be shooting directly into sun. So there's that. But, TSN's role is stay the course and keep being the strong asset that we've been for years. And, I think, Laura, obviously we've joked about it that you were only here for like 30 seconds before everything shut down, but Rashad's been here for like 15 years at this point. And, I think Rashad would agree when I say that I speak for everyone at TSN, both myself, Brandon, and student interns, take a lot of pride in what we do. I forget who it was, but someone was watching a Towson game from another school's broadcast. I won't name names, but they said, it's just frustrating because they feel like we do this and the other school doesn't do this. And they wanted, they just felt like, we do a good job, and we take it seriously. Not that other schools don't, but we know how important it is. And I love that our students get so locked in, and they still have a good time. We still have fun. I demand we have fun because that's part of it. But when it's go time, just like the athletes and the coaches, it's go time for us. It's game time. We're a well-oiled machine. There might be a couple bumps in the road early. We got a brand new TriCaster in the production room. Shout out to Kyle Ray for hooking us up, because that thing was really dying on us last year. But as we learn that new piece of equipment, we're going to be able to really do some more stuff. We're going to be able to do some neat things, I think. And it might not be evident right away because of Brandon and I really haven't gotten a chance to sit down on it yet, but there could be some cool stuff coming soon.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of TigerCast. Be on the lookout for our next episode with women's basketball player Siobhan Smith, and many of you know her as Scoop. Thanks again, guys, and we'll talk to you next time.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. There we go.
Tigers.